Hi, you guys. So, for those of you who missed the experiment for slime, that would be Eduardo and Megan. I'm going to go ahead and present to you the PowerPoint, and then this will be an Edpuzzle for you to do in as an alternate assignment for the slime. If you made the slime on your own, that's great. You can show it to me. Um, you can videotape it, do whatever you need to do. All right, but this will be your alternate assignment. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so slime, everything in the universe exists in some state of matter. So state of matter. There are three different states of matter. There is a liquid, there's solid, and there's gas. So can you name an example of each one? So can you name an example of a liquid? Can you name an example of a solid? Can you name an example of a gas? Okay, so think of liquids, think about things that you drink, think about things that pour. All right, for a solid, think about something that's hard. All right, something you can pick up, something that doesn't fall apart when you hold it. And then a gas, well, think about something you can't hold that's just kind of in the air. Usually, sometimes you can't even see it. You have things like when you're boiling water, if you ever see boiling water and the steam rising. Okay, so those are all some examples of liquids. So I'm going to try to have you be more specific. All right. Okay, next one is atoms and molecules. So states of matters depend on atoms and molecules and how they're put together. Depending on how atoms and molecules are put together will depend on how they react to each other. So depending on whether or not the atom and molecules are far apart and kind of floating there, that might be a state where it's a liquid. If the atoms and molecules are really, really tight and stuffed together in a small little, package, then you usually have a solid. And then if your atoms and molecules are all like in an excited state and they're kind of fuzzing around and getting all excited, that means that they're in a gaseous state. Okay, so it just depends on how the atoms and molecules get together. Okay. All right, so there's two kinds of reactions that we talked about today and that you're going to be observing when you make the slime. The first reaction is called endothermic. I know it's a big word, but all I want you just to remember about endothermic is that it's cold. Okay, it's colder. It makes things around it colder. It absorbs heat. So think of melting ice. Okay, melting ice is endothermic. It absorbs heat, so it's cold. When you kind of touch the area around melting ice, it's cold, right? Exothermic, well, that gives off heat, which means it's hotter. It makes the area around it hotter. So like a campfire. You ever had a campfire or a barbecue or anything like that? You don't want to get too close to it because it's hot. Okay, so exothermic would be hot. So endothermic, cold, exothermic, hot. So what's slime? Is slime endothermic or is it exothermic? Well, after you make the slime, you're going to need to answer that question. Is the slime cold or is it hot? All right. So is the slime endothermic or is it exothermic? All right. Even if you don't make the slime, you can kind of come up with a reasonable answer. Kind of think about it. We've got water, we've got glue, there's no heat source or anything. So you can probably answer that question even without making slime. All right, so there's a secret ingredient that I use to make slime. It's called borax, okay? And it's kind of a chemical that people use like in laundry. And what the borax does is it changes the molecules that are in the glue because we had glue and water that we mixed together, and then we added this stuff called borax. It's a powder. We made it into a mixture with water. And when we added the borax into the water and glue, the molecules in the water and glue got all kind of confused because this stuff that's not supposed to be in it was in it. And so it got all tangled up and confused. Kind of like maybe you might feel sometimes, when you're not really sure and you get confused, you kind of feel all tangled up inside. Okay, well, it's kind of what happened to our water and glue. It got all kind of tangled. And so what happens is when these molecules get all tangly, they get all slippery and slimy, and they kind of create like this blob. And maybe sometimes you feel like that, kind of feels like slimy sometimes, like, I don't want to be around. I'm all tangled and messy. Okay, so that's what happens when you add borax. All right, so if you made your slime, even if you didn't make your slime, just the word slime, and also with the Edpuzzle that you saw earlier that you did, So you can use what you saw earlier in the other ed puzzle. You can describe the slime even without actually making yourself. Okay. So how do you think the slime's going to feel? Is it going to feel stretchy, slimy, wet, gooey, squishy? Is it going to feel all? Is it going to feel none? All right, so what do you think it feels like? And again, remember, you can use the ed puzzle that you watched earlier. All right, or again, think of the word slime. I'm sure you probably have seen slime before. You've probably seen anything that has kind of slimy, goopy kind of feel to it. So what do you think it's going to feel like? Okay, so is slime a liquid? Well, take a look at slime. Think about slime. When you think about slime, what do you think about? All right, is it a liquid or is it a solid? Okay, you're like, well, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily look like a solid, but it's also not really a liquid either. So can it be both? Well, yeah, absolutely. It can be both. It can be both a liquid or a solid. Slime is both. Slime is both liquid and solid. And there's a fancy word for something that's a liquid and solid, and it's called a non-Newtonian fluid. All right, you don't need to know what a non-Newtonian fluid is. All you need to know is that there are some things in the universe that can exist in two states of matter, both liquid and a solid, together at the same time. And there's a couple other things that we'll be talking about that have the same principles as slime does, where it's called a non-Newtonian fluid. Okay. Alrighty. Well, make sure that you complete this video. If you do make your own slime, that's great. So make sure that you show it to us. And but by doing this, I will give you credit for the science experiment, and you are going to be responsible for knowing this stuff for the end of the unit test that we'll be taking in probably about 2 weeks. All right. All righty. We'll see you later.